Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. And here we are, the second episode of 2025. I am so excited because, well, I used to say that every week last year in 2024, so I should come up with something new, but I can't help myself. I had a good day today. It's been cold here in the Northeast, but shared a little bit of laughter yoga. That's something I do through my business, Laugh to Live. A lovely little coffee conversation, connection, and laughter this morning in downtown Scranton. And I have to say, it's certainly helped me feel better about this dreary weather. But without further ado, I want to get to the topic and the lovely women I'm going to talk to today. We're talking about nutrition. And boy, oh boy, I'm sure you could do a whole podcast on that, right? Yes, you can. In fact, these two ladies have just started a podcast called The RD Squeeze. And I'm so excited to hear what they have to say, not just about some tips about nutrition, but really what they're going to help us do is decipher a lot of the crap that's out there, a lot of the noise that's out there, and help us kind of like understand that what really we should be watching out for. So without further ado, let me welcome both my guests. Micki Orlowski, you've actually heard from Micki before, but it's been a while. Micki has been on the show and she's also into comedy. So you've heard me mention her before. And Emily Fashana, who I'm just meeting for the first time virtually. But let's start off with Micki. Welcome, Micki. How are you?
Good. How are you, Janine? It's good to see you.
It's great to see you as always. Micki is like a star of stage and screen, and she is all over the community here in Northeast PA. Why don't you remind listeners, in case they didn't hear you a couple of years ago, you were on actually right before Thanksgiving, so you were giving us some really great tips because I mean, let's face it, what do we all besides gratitude? It's about the food, right? At Thanksgiving, but this is a different time of year, different things to talk about. But give us a little bit of your background again for folks who may not remember.
Sure. So, I am a registered dietitian professionally, and I work currently at Marywood University as the program director for the Masters in Dietetic Internship program. Um, and so I also have many hobbies, and comedy is one of them. So I do improv comedy, stand-up comedy, mostly thanks to Janine because she typically asks me to do that. So that's so nice of her to do that. And then I recently was doing some community theater, which I hope to continue to do a little bit of that. And I'm just kind of all over the place. I don't like to settle down. And so Emily and myself also started a podcast this year. So we have a lot going on. And my main background is in dietetics, so professionally, but you know, I'm I'm a wealth of knowledge of other things too, I guess.
Yeah, in fact, I should say, and then I'll introduce you as well, Emily. But you posted something before the holidays that you were trying this theater, and I loved your message, more or less about trying new things, which I think is great because, and that's kind of probably good even in nutrition because picky eaters. I know I was raised by a picky eater, but before we go to Emily, one other thing, I think you're being too humble. Didn't you take on a new position also in a group in your profession?
Oh, yeah. So I am the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Chair for the Pennsylvania Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Um, I didn't want to see that go to the wayside, and no one was really kind of willing to step into the role at the time. So I stepped in, and so I'm doing that. And um, yeah, I'm also pursuing a PhD in strategic leadership and administrative studies. So that's also coming into play a little bit. In terms of some of the content that we talk about. So lots of things happening. Like I said, I don't sit still, which is a curse and a blessing, I guess.
I was gonna say, geez, Micki, God, could you like do something so we could have something to talk about?
I know, right? I know. I'm one of those boring people that has nothing to say.
Well, thank you, Micki, because I know you've actually a lot of things have happened since you were on, so there's some new stuff there. But Emily, it's such a pleasure. Emily Fashana, this is the first time I'm meeting you. Pardon me, and you talked to me a little bit before I hit the record button, but tell my listeners a little bit about your background and about yourself.
Well, thanks, Janine, for having us on and me on specifically. In regards to meeting you now officially, I've seen one of your comedy shows, so I've met you, but through the audience, and I loved it. But yes, I'm a registered dietitian as well. I'm originally from Michigan, so Northeast Pennsylvania is, I would have to say, similarly to Michigan as far as the weather goes. We get a little more snow in Michigan and we drive through it. We don't cancel school or anything. So, that was a change out. But I am a clinical dietitian at a medical center in our area. Also have my own private practice where I work a lot with athletes and mostly in their adolescence, college age. But I've had background with working with triathletes who are older adults, looking to just improve their nutrition. And I did just start working with another company who does a lot of like OT therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy with younger children who have disabilities and learning needs. So that's a fun interest that I'm gearing up to learn a lot more about, but just something different, kind of like Micki said, we kind of like to dive into a lot of different areas. So we never get bored in nutrition. There's always something else to learn about or do. I do a lot with my clientele with intuitive eating, and Micki and I have an episode specifically on that. But what intuitive eating is really just creating a healthy relationship with food, not necessarily dieting, not focusing on weight so much, but focusing on why are we eating the way we're eating? Why are certain foods, why do we crave them all the time? Why do we want them? Our cultures, maybe, and how we can continue to include those foods in our diets, even if they're not seen as the general population might think is healthy. We typically don't use the term healthy, bad, good, because we want to create a healthy relationship with all foods. So I've had that history for about 8.5, 10 years now. And then I have been a food service director. So I've worked in that area of nutrition and dietetics as well. And I've worked a little bit in the community. I worked at a YMCA, but I did more counseling there. But I also worked with the children's programs there. So I did a lot of cooking classes. And I do that at my current job too. I do a lot of cooking classes. So that's fun. We actually just had one today. So
Oh,
we had
nice.
we had a fun time.
Nice. Can I ask you before I get into the nutrition stuff, if you don't mind answering, you could tell me mind my business. What brought you to Pennsylvania?
So nutrition and dietetics was competitive. It still kind of is, but getting a little more, many more programs are opening up and opportunities. So I went to school in Ohio for my undergraduate degree in dietetics at Bowling Green State University. Go Falcons! And then because we had to figure out where you're doing your internship, apply to an internship, get accepted to an internship. It's very similar to medical school and getting matched. Marywood University was where I got matched to for my internship, and they also had a sports nutrition program. So that was kind of specifically what I was looking at for my master's. And so here I am. I forget how many years later now.
Oh,
13,
wow.
12, I don't know. I met my husband out here, so here I am staying in Northeast PA, and that's how Micki and I met through our profession.
Well, I love that because I'm a every area has its problems, no doubt, but I'm a fan of the region. So I love hearing when people are from a different area when they come here. So welcome on, although you don't need a welcome because you've been here a while. So thank you for staying anyway.
Yeah.
Um, so I just had an idea, or excuse me, a question pop up into my head, and I really didn't mention it before. So you might look at me and go, "Oh God, you had to ask about that," but only because it's a really popular trend right now. And if you have any thoughts on it, I'll welcome you either both of you to share. What is the buzz, or what are you guys thinking, talking about as far as the drugs like Ozempic? Is there conversation around those? I know that's not nutrition, but it's got to be a thought. And believe me, I'm not trying to, oh, here's a tough one. It's just because it's so popular right now. And I just thought, like, oh, I wonder what you guys think of it. That's all. And we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but anything that you want to share about that.
Yeah, it could be its whole episode, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Go ahead, Micki, if you want to start, go ahead.
No, I was actually going to say, if you want to go first, you're more than welcome to.
All right. Well, I get a lot of clients that are on Ozempic or some of the other weight loss drugs like Wegovy or some of like Orlistat, things like that. Um, Again, coming from where I am with the intuitive eating, I focus on the behaviors. It the research is out there. It works. It does work. It provides benefit for weight loss. We see 5 to 10% at least weight loss success, and those are not the exact numbers. I'm just quoting the general numbers. But we do see improvements in weight. However, in addition, it is important to see a registered dietitian and also be under a physician's monitoring of that medication. I think there's so many commercials out there now that do have or say they have the physicians who are, and I'm not going to put anyone on the spot, any specific one, but that they have, a physician under physician's guidance, you can be on this medication. Some of those are actually not quite the same as the Wegovy or the Orlistat or the Ozempic. They're not the exact same. They're kind of like a byproduct of it. And so it's not going to work specifically the same way as those injections work. So just be cautious of that as well with some of those commercials that are coming out. Make sure it is the exact same formulation. Going back to having a dietitian, it's because right now we cannot say if you go off the medication, you're not going to gain the weight back, because that is what happens. You end up gaining the weight back. What these medications are doing, and I love to explain in more layman's terms, is that it's causing you to not be as hungry. And so therefore your portions are being reduced. Thus, you're not eating as many calories, and thus you are going to lose weight. Once those hormones that are in those medications are stopped, you're going to start feeling hungry again. And I've had plenty of people who have been switched or who are not on as high of a dose who say, I'm still feeling hungry. And the concern with that is we don't want these to be long-term. Now, again, the data is still coming out. The research is still coming out. We're not sure long-term being on these medications, what it's going to do, because really they've only been out for like 2 to 4 years as a weight loss medication. So we don't know long-term, is it going to affect your kidneys, your liver, any other metabolic changes in your diet, any kind of thyroid issues, things like that. Is it going to affect anything else? We're not quite sure yet. So long-term data is not there. Short-term, yes, just like diets, yes, there's going to be success. But as soon as you go off of them, the success rate might go down. So by seeing a dietitian, you're going to be able to create behaviors that flow with the benefits of the medication, and then that you can continue if you are weaned off or taken off the medication. That medication, sure, may have helped you get to a weight that you're comfortable at, that you're more able to do things, that you're able to breathe better, your knees aren't hurting as much. It might help with that. And that's absolutely a great reason to be on a medication to get healthier in that respect. But then when we go off of it, if someone does go off, we want to make sure you're sustaining those lifestyle changes. And what I always like to say to end and me answering this is, when people go on diets, when they do these new health and fitness things, you're doing everything all at one time. You're changing your diet, you're moving your body more, you're getting more sleep, you're in a routine, you're consistent. And then we kind of start to not be as realistic. And that's where some of those New Year's terms come in, the resolutions, is that we want to make them realistic and long-term versus just short-term. And well, I'm only going to do that for a couple months until I lose 10 pounds, until I get to my bikini body, until I get to, having a little more muscle. And then I'm just going to go back to eating the same way I used to. We want to create long-term change.
Yeah. Micki, did you want to share anything different on that? Or, I mean, you can pass. It's totally up to you.
I'll just add a couple comments because I think Emily summed it up really well. And this is why we have a podcast together, because we're both very like-minded, but also she's the brains and the clinical stuff, and I'm like the brains and the other stuff, I guess, or just the entertainment. I don't really know. But yeah, so I mean, Ozempic and those injections started as diabetes medication. So they were meant to treat and reduce cravings and appetite and those hormones specifically that are related to hunger and things like that. So taking that into consideration, it wasn't necessarily intended for this, and now it seems to be working. But also think about all the other side effects when they list off in the commercials or on the side of the label, like all the other side effects that come with it as well. I think that's also just a concern. So, I'm all for if that's what you want to do to make yourself happy, that's fine. But really also reflect on why you feel like you need to lose weight to be happy, or to reflect on that. And maybe there's other not so drastic ways to make those changes. Maybe start small and start with eating habits first, and move progressively. And if nothing seems to be working, and not nothing because it's not working in a quick fix, but nothing seems to be working because of a medical condition or whatever the case may be, and you still want to pursue that, but not go the surgery route, I would say then sure, pursue it. I mean, I'm not here to, to judge anybody on what they want to do. But for us, I think Emily and I, we know that there's not the long-term studies founded, and also there is data to support that. And once people do stop, they do regain the weight typically. So it really is about changing behaviors, no matter what it is. Nothing is a quick fix. So yes, it's a quick fix soon, but also is just drinking celery juice for 12 days in a row. Like that's
Mm.
also a quick fix. So like again, not condoning either one of those things, but just, you know, I think that's like the main thing is like it all falls down to habit changes and like behavior changes. And again, I think that's something, with a therapist, but also with a dietitian can help with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. This is my side note. I just find it interesting too, from I don't know what perspective, but we had this movement about, body positivity and like celebrating, women with curvier bodies or larger bodies. And then you see a lot of, it seems to be celebrities or, people who are, I believe, on some kind of drug. And now it's like, wow, look at me now. And it just kind of makes me wonder. It's almost that like, hypocritical or ironic, like, wait, but I thought you were celebrating, and I mean, a person should be healthy. So I totally, what I mean? It's got to be about your health and how you're feeling. But I think that whole standard of like, let me get skinnier or whatever it's not gone. So I think that
Mhm.
I believe that might be motivating some people, but that's just
Yeah.
thoughts that pop into my head, you
I
know?
I think too, based off of mine and Emily's perspective too, body size is not a good indicator of overall health. So if your sole reason to get healthy is to reduce your body size, uh, maybe pursue other options, because again, somebody can be very, very thin and in a smaller body and still be very unhealthy, and someone in a larger body can still be at a healthy level. Their labs could be great. They could, be able to exercise just fine, and have a, good heart rate or whatever, no high blood pressure, things like that. So just take that in consideration too. If you're solely seeking health, it may not be related to your body size. But if you are seeking other health and it is related to your body size, then that might be an option too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Right now I'm not able to run like I used to for I won't get down to my road of woes, but I remember in the Runner's World magazine there were people like larger size women and they would say how people were giving them looks or whatever like and it's like no, I can run, and I'm
Mhm.
out here doing it the same as someone who's half my size and enjoying it, getting the benefits and having the ability to. So that's I mean again, talk about behavior it's and also mindset, what people think about things and that's that'll be my segue into what I want to ask you guys about why you started your podcast so that you could be the real information because we have so much misinformation out there and my gosh I should have someone on every week about all the misinformations out there. We know how false a lot of information is out there. It's like if I look at this piece of a donut, a chocolate donut, and I go no, this is the same as broccoli because I say it does not make it true, right? Things that are just because a person says something, it doesn't make it factual. But you guys started your podcast because you're both knowledgeable, you have great experience, and you want people to have the right information, the correct information. And the one thing I wanted you guys to address is right now the whole idea of misinformation and people are all over TikTok with different diets like just eat 17 peanuts a day or like I don't even know what they are because I don't really spend much time on TikTok. I'm not that hip. I do have an account, I just don't really use it. But do you want to start, either one of you, I'll leave it up to you who wants to start with some guidance that you can give listeners about this? And I mean obviously they should be thinking, wait a minute, is this really going to be healthy? But wherever you want to start with that, I'll leave that up to you guys.
Yeah. Emily, do you want me to start and then segue to you? Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Emily and I, as she alluded to, we met actually through various like organizations. We met through the Northeast Pennsylvania Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And I kind of followed her suit. Like every position she was in, I was kind of like right underneath her, and I just kind of followed her. And that's how we became friends and close friends. And within that, we ended up being president, her being president and me being president-elect at one point. So we would get together a lot and like have dinners and go for some adult beverages or things like that, just to kind of catch up, and like her basically train me to be the president of NEPAND at the time. And one day we had a couple drinks and we were talking about, our frustrations with, health misinformation, and, we're going on. And like 2 hours later, we're like, damn, we should have recorded that. Like that was like so intense conversation. And then a few years later, I think around that time, COVID happened, and like, we all had other things. I think Emily was getting married at the time. So like there was just a progression of events that we didn't really start a podcast, but we had talked about it. And finally we were like, let's just do it. Let's just, start it and see what happens. I mean, we're doing it for fun, but we're also doing it to help the community. And that's where it kind of stemmed from, because there was so much misinformation, so much, trends and like buzzwords, and like how do you decipher all this, and who do you believe? I'm not going to say everybody's going to believe us, because not everybody's going to believe whoever they want to believe, and beliefs are very hard to change. But we were hoping to put out at least evidence-based information, because dietitians are evidence-based and we have an ethical code that we have to abide by, to put that information that is accurate and as least biased as we possibly can be. I mean, I think our, personal antidotes come in, but also we talk about how personal antidotes are somewhat evidence in some ways. Our life experiences are evidence in our case, but also like we do incorporate studies or articles or, things that are legitimate into the podcast to talk about those things. So that's kind of where it stemmed from. And we've been slowly but surely tackling that as we go through. But I think one of the big things is just kind of recognizing what are the red flags and what aren't the red flags, when it comes to anybody who's a TikToker, an influencer, who's on Instagram. Like, who do you believe? And I think Emily can kind of probably talk a little bit about that. And I can add it if there's anything I feel like needs to be added.
Okay. Oh yeah, you can add you can add for sure. We actually have an episode on some of this. It's our episode number 6, is serving up influence, and we talk about the videos that shape our health mindset, the videos that are out, eat this, not that, what I eat in a day videos. So recognizing when, first off, if it's a professional doing it, I think that's the biggest thing. Is it just someone who enjoys working out? Is it athletic trainer? Is it a personal trainer? Who is actually putting this information out there? Is it an athlete? Why are you following them, and what's making you want to dive into what they're sharing? Are they sharing something as well because it's maybe supporting or recommending a supplement that you're like, oh, what's this about? Should I try this? And we talk about that as well on our podcast, of like how to just be cautious of that. We also, as dietitians, some dietitians do work for companies that have foods and supplements that they're promoting. As dietitians, we do, and our profession did get a little in trouble for this, or kind of hit on, but when you compare it to how many influencers are out there that are promoting products, well, they're not getting hit on for posting it, and then maybe not verbally saying they're promoting a product, but they wrote it in their comments, or vice versa. They forgot to write it in their comments, but they verbally said it. So those were some things that dietitians quickly fixed and made sure that they were putting out there, so the public knew what they were doing if it was a product that they were promoting. But influencers and TikTok people aren't required to do that. So we do take into consideration, and we take that accountability for what has to happen in order to keep the public safe with the information. As far as like other things that maybe they're posting about, I always say looking at if it tells you what, when, and maybe like how much of the food to eat, or a specific food you should be eating, or you need to eat this food every single day. It's a diet, or it's a fad that's going around. And if it's saying that, not that it's wrong, not that it's wrong information, not that that food might not be nourishing to our body and have a lot of nutrients in it, but eating it every day, is that realistic? or not consuming food after 7 p.m. Well, what if you have a late day and you're starving and you need to eat after 7? Are you going to starve yourself? So those are the types of things I try and tell my clients and viewers to just kind of keep an eye on. If it's being very strict, that's something we want to give caution to, because we need flexibility in our diet. We're not looking at perfection. We're not looking at every single day we're going to eat, the same foods, chicken, rice, and broccoli. Like, that's not realistic for us to do. And we're going to get sick of the food, and our taste buds are going to want more than that. So I think those are kind of my big areas for social media, on kind of what to keep an eye on.
You
Yeah.
mentioned, and then Micki, I'm sorry, I'll go to you too. The idea of not eating after 7, like that's one just, you hear about intermittent fasting. And again, I'm sure that's a whole different episode, but it's so interesting to hear, and I don't necessarily follow, but I like to read what's out there. Some people are like, that's terrible for you. And other people are like, it's like, oh, I'll never eat after 6 or never eat after 7. And I'm guilty of
Right.
eating after like sometimes 11 o'clock at night or whatever. Not often, but it's just interesting. That's been out there as a no-no for so long. But you make a really good point about like, people could just have had a late day, like you said, or maybe they work differently, different hours, and they have to eat at a certain time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Micki.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna add a couple of things there too. I think another thing that I always kind of laugh at or giggle at is if they use like this like inflammatory language, like it's toxic, or it's clean, or it's whatever it is. If nothing's toxic unless it's poisoned or rotten, basically. Like, there's no foods that are super toxic. Now, a big thing that's very popular right now is like ultra processed foods. Like, that's a big trending thing right now, and we plan on doing a future episode on that. But ultra processed food is basically what now people would consider junk food. Um, I think Emily and I say fed is best. So again, if you're talking about junk food, or if you're talking about food in a negative manner like that, that's a very privileged way to come from, because you don't know anybody's accessibility, or what they can eat, or what they can afford, or what their like socioeconomic status is, or anything like that, to be vilifying that food towards them. So to put that like weight of guilt or not guilt on that, or shame or not shame with foods, I think is damaging to your credibility, because you're not taking that all from perspective. Also, with clean eating, it's like you have to eat clean. Well, what does clean mean? Like, there's no dirty foods unless you haven't washed it, right? So if we're talking about high fiber foods, if you're talking about vegetables, if you're talking about lean meats, why are we labeling it clean, or why are we using like these buzzwords to call them that? So anything that's like labeling food in that kind of manner, I'm always like, red flag. Um, and then, again, using those like, and another big thing was like seed oils is like toxic, and there there's very little evidence to support that. I think a lot of people focused on one study, which again is a very big red flag. If you're focusing on one citation and one study, if you're not looking at all of the research, and let's be honest, most of us aren't reading journal articles every day, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're not well versed in health literacy. So in terms of, you did your research, you Googled it, and you found something that confirmed your own biases, which is confirmation bias. Okay. So, and again, this is like a lot of jargon, but in terms of like, that's an algorithm, right? Like, that's confirming everything that you're Google searching. So you're going to get those influencers who are talking about clean eating if you're Googling, how to lose weight or whatever. So just like thinking about that, like questioning and being a skeptic always, I think, is an important part of being a social media consumer. And then like looking at their citations, their credentials, like if they just have a background in accounting, what makes them credible to talk about, food, nutrition, health, medicine, supplements, like what gives them the right. Um, Whereas, and as Emily mentioned, we've gotten into some hot water related to that. But again, we have a code of ethics, we are regulated. Influencers aren't regulated unless they have a credential. So again, if someone's credentialed, they typically have a code of ethics. Doctors have codes of ethics, nurses, physician assistants, any of those health professions. So I would say follow them. And again, there's some doctors out there who say, oh, I'm Dr. So and so, but then they're maybe like a naturopathic doctor, and again, nothing wrong with that, but are they qualified to be talking about medication? So
Mm.
I don't know, coming from that end, it's like, does their credentials speak to what they should or could be an expert in? Like, what makes them qualified to talk about that? Because I think a lot of people get that confused. Like, they'll say, "Oh, I'm a doctor." They're a doctor of physical therapy, but they're talking about nutrition and diet when they have no education in that. I don't have a like if I get a doctorate in strategic leadership and administrative study, that doesn't mean I can go into an emergency room and start operating on somebody. Like, they're very different credentials for everybody. So that's a vent and a ramble, I guess, on that. um but yeah, I think those are two big things, is if like they're using inflammatory language to kind of get you to click on it or to keep you engaged in that, and then like kind of manipulate you into thinking a certain way, and then also using non-credentials or credentials, and evidence to support their claims.
And unfortunately, that's, and no matter whether you're a nutritionist or whatever it is, if you want to get people to listen, it seems like sadly that is the thing, right? The most shocking, the most toxic, you're right. I see that all the time. And I get, because, I was talking to Emily before I hit the record button about, being in perimenopause, and, that's a whole set of struggles. And, honestly, it is struggling because someone at my age, they kind of, sadly, I think the health community has failed us, failed women overall, but fail, especially older women, because it's just like, oh, that's because of menopause. It's like, oh, my foot's falling off. Yeah, it's probably menopause. And we don't really have an answer for stuff. And I'll, when I am looking for answers, for me, my biggest red flag is they want to sell, like, because I get sucked in with, ooh, talk to me. And then it's like, but wait, I have supplements or something. And I'm like, no, no, because how do I know your supplements? And they might be okay, but how do I know? You're just trying to sell to me. I spent the most time one day on a treadmill at Planet Fitness on stuck poop. That was the woman. She was a doctor talking about stuck poop. And I couldn't believe and it was all this natural stuff you had to get. But guess what? She happened to sell that supplement for like, I don't know how much. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm out. But the last thing I watched this weekend, and I will say, I kind of felt I got some good information, although I'm sure she was selling something and I clicked off before then. Marissa Tomei, who is in that my age range, menopausal, and I'm like sucked in. I'm like, oh, talk to me, Marissa. And she was like sharing all this stuff, and I'm like, okay. And she shared different food groups that are supposed to be good, and I'm like, okay, blueberries, I heard that before, of course, asparagus, all these different foods. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. But she was about to sell me something, and then I clicked off. I was like, okay, I'll just take this little bit of info and I'm done.
Yeah.
What's that? Go ahead.
I was just say, yeah, like they suck you in. Like, I got on that stuck poop commercial. I got on it. Like, and I know better. Like, I listened to her. I know who exactly what you're talking about. And they suck you in. But then you notice they never give you the secret, because they have this secret, but it's right here. But oh, we're gonna talk a little bit more. That's a gimmick. That's like selling. That's a marketing ploy to get you to buy those things. And like I said, I'm no different. I get sucked into those different things, but yeah, it happens. And you're like, how did I get here? Like, how did I thought I was smarter than this. Like, but they suck you in, and that's part of the job. Like, but I remember that, because I mean, I've had digestive issues in the past. I'm very open about that. And like, I have wanted to try all the different things. I've sucked into that. I've tried different supplements before, because they do promise you these things, and you're like, well, what's the worst that can happen, right? Like, at least I'll try it and see if it works. But again, that's not a bad thing. Working with supplements, they can also be helpful. I mean, I started taking B12 regularly, and my energy levels changed. Like, there's a time and place for supplements for sure. But I think the ones that are gimmicky are like, superfoods. Okay, like, or like these greens powders, or like, I don't know, like, they're just like, there's nothing really beneficial other than like they may give you gas. Like, I don't know. like they're like, oh, I'll increase your fiber, but like they don't tell you that that increase in fiber will give you like horrible gas. So like, is that something you want to deal with? I don't
Yeah, yeah.
know. But yeah, sorry. But I got sucked in that stuck poop commercial. I did, and I was like, damn it.
Well, now I feel seen, Micki. No, it's just so funny because I don't normally, not that I'm like saying I'm so smart or whatever, but I'm like, I don't have patience, right? And it was literally like you're saying, it was like in 30 seconds, we'll tell you how. And the next, it's literally like 12 minutes later. And I'm like, oh, come on. What the hell's the secret? Where am I going to get it? And then
Yeah.
it's like this woman and then the website. And I'm like, and I went to the website and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm not paying, I don't have money to spend $100 a month on supplements or whatever the hell it was. Plus,
Yeah.
not knowing. But, and then I want to get Emily's take on this too. But we talked before, it's a lot about behavior. And so you could get some supplements, but that's not ultimately probably the answer. But I will say it can be frustrating. And I think this feeds back into what you were both saying about the misinformation. It is so damn hard. And I think it's harder for women because we're being sold to so much stuff. Like, especially, I mean, at my age, it's like, which foundation and which this, which that. I mean, at your ages too, I'm sure. But it's hard to know. You mentioned, Micki, the greens. You see stuff about that. Should I be doing the greens? Should I, through the years, apple cider vinegar? Oh, have a spoonful of olive oil every morning. Do this, do that. It gets, and then the supplements I'm on, probiotic, the B12. I'm on, my nails started breaking because of, I think, thyroid issues. So it's biotin. And you just sometimes, one, you don't know what's working, what isn't. Two, you could spend a fortune and not even be knowing if anything's working. So what can you help me out here, Emily? What can we do?
Well, that's where a dietitian comes in. Sometimes we do a full assessment and we check, like, is your skin, is your nails, is your hair, how is that? Do you have like peeling corners of your mouth? All these different things dietitians look at as micronutrient deficiencies to see, do you really need a supplement? Because, looking at Dr. Oz, I'm throwing him out there for sure. He's one who has been a huge person in the supplement and just like claims world of this is going to work for your diet and for you to be able to lose weight and be healthy and all these things. Those are all claims. Our regulatory agency does not say that yes, those claims are true. They can put 20 different claims on there and none of them have to be true. And that's where I was talking about earlier with the weight loss meds. If you're going through like a third party weight loss medication provider, they're claiming all these other things that it's going to do. Unfortunately, it's probably not doing any of that. And it probably isn't even, if it's not the Wegovy or the Ozempic or whatnot, it's not even helping with the weight loss. So we can claim all these different things with supplements, even like turmeric, however you want to pronounce it. Those types of supplements, I'm trying to think of another main one that a lot of people are on. But
Fish
anyway,
oil is one.
fish oil is a big one too. And that one, there are definitely some pros to that one. And I know in the older population, especially, that tends to be used a lot more. Even in the cancer population, there's studies out there that if someone's having trouble with gaining weight and malnourished, that can help them with absorbing and gaining some weight. So there are those the evidence out there for some of those, but like turmeric as a supplement, you're going to be getting way too much of that as a supplement. Rather put it in your eggs, put it on your I don't know, cottage cheese or something. Put it in your salad dressing. Do things like that with it so you're actually using the actual food or spice or whatever it is in your diet. And I think a lot of people, when we're hearing these things, it's like, I have to have it every day. That's not a balanced diet. We don't assess nutrition based on perfection and based on every single day. It's that you're getting a variety so that that variety works together in your system, in your body for absorption, and then all your cells, all your function in your body work properly. So every single day, sure, if you like blueberries, go ahead, eat them every day. But does that mean every day you have to have them? No, not necessarily, as long as you're including them here and there, especially when we think about privilege and having access to food. What if someone can only afford one fruit a week? Okay, let's pick a fruit, and each week maybe you rotate the color so that way it is still giving your body the variety, and over time it's going to be able to say, okay, I'm getting enough of these nutrients, we're going to now work together and make our body function properly. So I'm a big food first person. I think most dietitians are. There are some supplements that, again, if you have maybe certain conditions, GI issues tend to be one of the biggest ones, where maybe you're not absorbing 100% of the foods that you eat. Maybe you can't eat enough of those food items, and sure, that might lead to weight gain, so you don't want to. So that might be where a supplement comes in. And that might be where just an individual one, not a complete multivitamin, comes in. So as a dietitian, we can, at least at my facility, I can order labs. If not, you can definitely ask primary care providers to order those labs. Get checked first. I think insurance needs to start covering some of that. I'm preventative. That's why I went into nutrition and dietetics. So the fact that I have to pay for a vitamin D panel when we're checking to see where it's at with thyroid issues, I should have that completely covered. Even if I'm an older adult, if I'm a menopausal woman, I should have that covered. And maybe there are some cases where it is, but I should have that 100% covered and not pay over $300 for one lab value to see where I'm at, because I have all the signs and symptoms of a deficiency. So that's where I think we get into a lot of the healthcare concerns. But as a dietitian, we can definitely chime in and make sure that you're getting the right nutrients, adding them into your diet, and then if a supplement's needed, go to those.
Yeah, well, and you said a lot there, and that could be beyond an episode, right, about healthcare. Because
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
really think about it, that's where the people who come on board and can influence or manipulate, because we're looking for answers, because healthcare does cost so much. It doesn't cover things. You're right, vitamin D. Anytime my doctors for the past several years would put it on there, I'd say, remove this, please. Or I'd say, don't take that, don't draw that one, because I'm not paying for it. And this is the first year I've ever had to actually pay for blood work that I thought was supposed to be pretty standard. And the only one that was covered was for cholesterol, the lipids. I was like, what? But that's where I learned my iron was getting a little bit lower. So now I'm taking an iron. But I mean, you could go crazy. I feel I could go crazy. The chia seeds, you got to sprinkle those on things. Like you could be taking literally, like, forget the 101 Dalmatians. It's 101 vitamins or more. It gets really, really tough. It really does. But I don't want to go on and complain about that. Micki, did you have anything else to add about that? And then I'm going to wrap up with a closing question, but go ahead. I want to give you a chance.
I did have one thing to add to that, and you kind of almost alluded to it in your response. There is like, even for me, I'm on an iron supplement too because of the GI issues, and also I've turned out to be anemic. And what they don't tell you though, and now I know this because I'm a dietitian, but what they don't tell you is, certain nutrients help absorb nutrients better. So for example, vitamin C helps iron be absorbed. So if you're taking a vitamin C supplement with your iron, you're more likely to absorb that. Even with your foods, like if you're taking, if you're having spinach or a steak or whatever, and you have that with some sort of vitamin C. So I'm this is obviously not recommended meal, but like let's say you have a spinach salad with like orange slices, like mandarin oranges or something, goat cheese, and then like a steak on the side. That's like married, you will absorb that better than you would if you were just taking the supplement in general. So like that's something that physicians aren't going to talk about because they spend like 15 minutes with you. So if they're prescribing any supplements to you, again, I hate to be like PSA for dietitians, but again, go to your dietitian and say like, hey, like my doctor prescribed this, like what ways can I incorporate this as food? Because again, supplements are way more expensive typically than food. And then, what's the best way to absorb that, with those things, even like minerals like potassium and sodium go together. Like there's certain ones that like they're partnered and they're made to go together to function better. So if you're only doing one of those, it's not going to function as well. But nobody tells you that, especially not anybody in like a health profession. You're not going to have any clue that that's what works. So I just think, always ask questions. That's why you're there. And I know self-advocating is like very hard, especially for women, because we get gaslighted a lot into
Yeah.
thinking, we're crazy, or it's just menopause, or it's just perimenopause, or it's just your period, or whatever it is. Like it's just, all those things. Ask questions, advocate, and if you're not happy with your provider, go to somebody else, because there's going to be somebody that's going to listen to you. And those are the ones that we want to uplift, not the ones that are just going to gaslight you or send you a supplement and send you home and make you pay $500 for a vitamin channel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was just like my 2 cents.
Yeah. I just want to, and then we'll go to Emily. The one thing I wanted to say, and the other thing I would say too is that advocate for yourself, but it is okay to do your own research and homework. And I know you just have to be careful where you get from, because that whole idea with the iron and vitamin C, I know that now because I looked it up. I mean, my iron is just below the normal level, but it's not serious. So my doctor didn't even tell me. She's like, if you want to go ahead. She wasn't concerned about it. I started taking just a basic over the counter iron, but I was reading about it because, of course, I was like doing a ton of searches that I shouldn't take it with coffee because that kind of blocks absorption from what I read, and that I should take it with vitamin C. So I've been doing that. But yeah, I think it is important too, because your doctors aren't telling you this kind of stuff. But I would just say be careful of the source. That's all. I usually trust like a Mayo Clinic, Cleveland, any of those health clinics, CDC, things like that. Those articles I typically trust. So that's how when you said that, I'm like, I do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Emily, go ahead. I know
I
you're
just
like,
wanted to add
point.
to people who go on supplements. If you're on other medications, there's interactions. So, I mean, that fruit and veggie one that's out there, each is a different pill, that interacts with just a statin. So, if you're on a statin, it's interacting and you should not be taking those. So, again, medical interactions or medicine interactions is going to happen with supplements.
And that's an important point too, that you have to be cautious of, because I often wonder that too, even with the supplements I am taking. I only researched really the iron and the vitamin C, but I'm like, what about the rest of them? What about the probiotic? What about the B12? What about the vitamins? I have zinc I take, and I know zinc, the only thing I know about that is not to take it on an empty stomach because I got nauseous the day I did that. But I'm like, okay. But for me, I'm all about trying to fight the colds and stuff. Vitamin C and zinc, those are the ones I do. But like, you don't know if you're not informed on this stuff, you don't know. So you want to be very cautious of that, especially with, as you mentioned, Emily, the prescription drugs. Yeah, definitely. Well, as we start to wrap up, first, I want to thank you both, because this has been, again, we could talk a lot. There are so many things to talk about. And I want to thank you so much for addressing all the stuff that I threw out. But as we close, I know I had mentioned, last week I had on Elizabeth, who has Life Purposely about coaching. So we kind of talked a little bit about the New Year stuff. And I don't personally love this whole New Year, New You resolution stuff, because there's something very like you're not good enough, or you know what I mean? Like you have to make change. And as we talked about last week, Elizabeth and I, you can make change anytime. And if you start something and you stop a few days later, don't think, well, that's the end, or like, or, oh, I'm terrible. Just take a breath and start again whenever you're ready. So we kind of addressed that, but I'd love for you, in closing, each of you to offer just some words of wisdom, as far as I know you guys had talked a little bit about it on your podcast, but just a couple tips maybe when it comes specifically to making change when it comes around behaviors with eating.
Do you want to go first, Emily?
All right, sure. Well, episode 9 is our New Year's resolution episode. So tune into that on the RD Squeeze again if you want to listen in. I love what you just said, because we actually touched on that. We touched on making the goals realistic and not setting them so far up the ladder of, yeah, you want to lose 50 pounds, but okay, in a month, I want to lose half of that. That's not realistic. How are you going to get there? And that's your behaviors are going to get you there. So setting small, smart goals is what we talked about. So specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely goals you want to set. So that way you're not overachieving. You're not saying, oh my gosh, I can't do this, I'm just going to give up now. One of my big things during the episode was to say exactly kind of what you said. And like, you know what? If the wintertime you want to do a different goal, and then in the springtime and the summer you choose something different for, let's say it's your activity goal, totally change it. There's nothing wrong with making a change to your goal, or saying, hey, you know what, I think I can't achieve that right now, let me rework that. Or, I'm not able to prepare my meals this day, let me switch what days I'm doing it, because I found that these days are actually a lot better, and I actually end up doing more preparation on a day that I didn't think I would. So that's kind of my big thing too, is continue to reassess throughout the year so you don't feel like a failure. And I hate or dislike, I don't like the word hate. I dislike when people have so much negative thought when it comes to goals. Keep the positivity, keep that negative thought minimal. And how can you rethink those negative thoughts and change them into positive affirmations for you moving forward with your health goals?
That's great. Yeah, thank you, Micki. I do want to say, I actually, you guys would work well with Elizabeth. It's the life coaching and this, it's that whole idea, and setting things that are attainable. That's what I was going to say. SMART. I love that. That acronym works for a reason, because it is true about making goals. Micki, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Emily said. And when we're thinking about goals, I like to think of them um like Emily mentioned, they're supposed to be positive and they're supposed to be impactful, and you're supposed to almost like look forward to them.
Mm.
So when you get to the point where it feels like a chore or feels like something that you're not looking forward to doing, maybe again reassess. I think a lot of people, they say, "Oh, I want to eat, kale, 5 times a week." Okay, are you really going to eat kale 5 times a week? And is that like, or are you setting yourself up to fail? Because as we mentioned in our episode, most New Year's resolutions fail, and most people quit them by the end of January. So if it's, again, Emily mentioned this, I think, earlier in the episode too, like if you're picking 17 goals, are you really going to stick to 17 goals, and maybe just pick one and see the success rate of that? And if you feel like adding something else, slowly incrementally add more to that goal, or add something else on if you feel like that's sustainable to you. I think we mentioned, to build a habit, it takes 21 days. So, or more. And also assessing, where you're at in terms of if you can do it. So again, this can relate to health, it can relate to anything. It can relate to, money, it can relate to whatever you're working on. You know, is it something that you can actually do and commit to, and something that you can look forward to doing? So, I'm thinking of money here because that's one thing, like I always want to put more money in my savings account. So if it's that, or if it's something with related to food, so maybe it's, I want to eat at least fruit 3 times a week. What's going to make that the easiest thing for you to do? For me, mine is transferring my money immediately, like automatic transfers. So for you, for who wants to eat fruit 3 times a week, going grocery shopping and making sure that you pick at least 3 fruits that you actually enjoy, and like washing them, cutting them, preparing them, because your body knows that they're ready and they're in the fridge and you can see them, or they're on your counter, you can see them. That might be, that sounds like not a goal. It sounds like just meal prep, but that's a goal, right? Like that's something that you're working on slowly to make yourself eat the fruit or the veggies or whatever it is, and kind of almost helping yourself and assisting yourself with that goal. So if you're setting this huge goal, think about all the little steps that you would have to do to achieve the goal, and think about, is that realistic? If 3 fruits a week is not, realistic, maybe just have an apple a week. Start slow and then go from there. Because nobody wants to feel frustrated when you're trying to achieve a goal, and you are going to get frustrated if it's not something that you're willing to stick to, and then you are going to just quit. We see this a lot with people who diet. Kind of relating this back to it, like if someone um, goes on a diet and they're like, oh, my cheat meal, or like, oh, my cheat meal's tomorrow, or like, oh, I had all this food, so I might as well just start, my diet next week since I already spoiled it all. That mentality is not setting yourself up for success. Don't make yourself feel like a failure if you also don't meet the goal. So let's say you did 2 out of the 3 days eating fruit that week. Are you going to be like, well, I missed one day, so screw it all, I'm never going to eat a fruit again? Like, no, like we're all human. We don't always, we make mistakes. We're not able to do that, but you'll feel less frustrated if it's something that's a smaller letdown, I guess. I don't know what the word I would look for is that, but you'll feel less frustrated if you do something small and then add to it and like incrementally make that change. I kind of rambled there, but
No, no, I totally, it's so funny what you said though, because I know I'm not a good eater. It's a struggle for me, and I do maybe better with fruit. It depends. Sometimes I'm better with vegetables, although I'm finding broccoli is kind of hard for me to digest anymore too. It bothers my stomach. But what you said is so true about the prep, because if I buy strawberries, right, and they're in the little plastic crate, and I'm less likely to eat them than if I wash them, cut them, and they're like in a jar or like a container where I can just put them in my mouth. And I know I mean, I feel terrible that I'm like kind of like lazy in that way, or whatever we want to say, but that I know that about myself. So that I think is an important point, like for people, like if they do struggle, like I do, if you have them sliced, they're clean, they're ready to go. I think that's easier. I know for myself that works. So little stuff matters too. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a great a tip. Um, In closing, so RD Squeeze, the RD Squeeze is your podcast, and I believe it is available pretty much wherever podcasts are, right? Apple, Spotify, etc.
Just Spotify
Oh,
for now.
Spotify
We'll
for
get it
now.
on
Okay.
Apple at some point.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're working on it.
Okay, I'm sorry. So Spotify is the place right now to go.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get them to Spotify. And individually, Emily, any place you would like us to point people if they are looking for a little bit of help? You said you have your own practice. Where can they go to find you out?
Oh, so I'm virtual. So you can just search my name or message me on Instagram. I'm ERF Nutrition, just my initials, and that's my business name is Emily Richter's Fashana. So you can just find me there. I'm on Facebook too. So find me there. If you need just an individual initial appointment, just come and see us. It's always good to just get kind of a basic background of like where am I at nutrition wise, like does a dietitian see a really big issue with how I'm eating and that I'm missing all these nutrients, especially for certain older adults. Are you getting enough vitamins and minerals, or do you need a multivitamin? That's really where vitamins came into play, by the way. Or are you menopausal and we need to make sure you have a lot of calcium rich foods and that vitamin D? Are you a younger teen and you're an athlete and I need to make sure you have every nutrient including carbohydrates? So it just helps to know where you're at and get a baseline so you can continue to work on your SMART goals.
And did you say you're virtual so people could call you from any or connect with
That's
you from
right.
anywhere? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. And Micki, before we close, I knew you said something that made me think of two things. The other thing, which I liked what you're saying, if you do 2 out of 3 vegetables, like it's not a loss, whatever. But I think the other point that I know even for myself is that you can always start again. And I think that's the thing. It's like you said, just because you only ate the 2, it doesn't mean that didn't help you. You did something good. Now that's positive. And okay, you messed up. Maybe the next day you mess up, but you could start the next day. Like it's not like you have to say, well, there goes everything that I had intended. You could start again anytime. So in closing, Micki, where would you like anything that you'd like to have people check out?
Sure. So I mean, I am on social media and Facebook and things like that. So my full name is Mickaline Orlowski, but I on Instagram I'm Micki Orlowski, and then I have a Professor Micki RD like public account. I don't use it too often, but I do have one. I'm not in a private practice or anything. I mostly work at Marywood, but if there's students that are interested in nutrition, feel free to reach out to me about that. I'm happy to help with that. And then yeah, I mean, in terms of comedy, I'm doing Scranton Improv and Comedies. We're going to be doing improv shows on Fridays at the AFA Gallery in Scranton. And then Janine, you and I have a show, thanks to you. We have a show on February 6th coming up. So that's for Galentine's Day. So I'm very excited about that. And that's pretty much it for me. I'm a busy bee, but I'm like trying to calm down a little bit. So that's kind of what's going on right now for me. I don't know if that's what you wanted, but that's what you got.
Hey, I wanted whatever you wanted to give, and thank you. I was gonna give a plug for Micki and I are gonna be performing together. Yes, February 6th. It's gonna be a fun Galentine's event. For folks who live here in Northeast PA, it's at the Everhart Museum, which is on the grounds of Naog Park in Scranton. Very cool. We did a show there in October. Nothing like performing comedy in a museum. It was really cool. And so Micki is going to be performing. I am Emily Epstein White is coming up from Philadelphia. She performed with me last January at Groove Brewing, and she's fantastic, super funny. There'll be wine, of course, and Electric City Sweets. Michelle Polito is someone I actually also had on the podcast. I think maybe last summer or spring. I think it was summertime, but she does these really cool Electric City Sweets candy bars. They're delicious. And I'm going to have a custom made candy wrapper on there with one of my Funny Wine Girl doodles. So you'll get one of those with the price of admission. So definitely check it out. I will actually put that in the show notes. And of course, Funny Wine Girl Janine. You can catch me on Facebook, Instagram. I'm now Real Funny Wine Girl Janine and a couple underscores because those lovely imposter hackers, whatever the heck you want to call them, that are super smart, were stealing my name there for a couple months. And before I could get rid of those little pesky little gnats, I changed my name and said, hey, this is the real Janine. So anyway, that's more than you needed from me. I'm sorry for that, adding that crap on there. But I want to thank you, Emily. Thank you, Micki. Honestly, we could talk for a really long time because I think this is fascinating. And I think it's something that a lot of people do. We do struggle with it for much of our lives. Many of us, our eating habits. And I know I have, but it's such an important thing. It's so tied to our health, our wellness, our happiness. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, not just with me, but with people that you encounter all the time. So thank you so much. And I'd like to thank my listeners. As always, be sure to check out a new episode airs every Thursday morning. And as you may have heard me say once or a million times, the goal of my podcast is to amplify the voices of women. You might catch an occasional male voice on here, but they have to be something pretty damn special. Otherwise, it's all about the women. And I hope that you're inspired, informed, entertained. And if you would like to help contribute and support this content, I'm always looking for podcast sponsors, something, of course, that would fit your budget. But hey, here's the thing, even if you don't have money in your budget to support that way, you can do something even just as good. You can share this content because, we need an audience. So share the podcast with someone that you think might enjoy it, or even someone that maybe you don't, because maybe you never know, they might surprise us. They might enjoy it. So I appreciate that. And as I say every week, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.